Hello and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make a gluten-free gingerbread cookie recipe. So this year I'm hosting our co-op's Christmas party and the theme is going to be cookie decorating. I decided to make it gingerbread man cookie decorating themed. So I have a fun DIY up on my channel of how to make these really cute personalized aprons with little gingerbread men or gingerbread girls on them. So I'm going to show you how to make these fun festive treats gluten-free. Let's get started.
Alright, to a medium-sized bowl, we're going to start by adding 3 3/4 cup of all-purpose gluten-free flour. So I'm using Pillsbury today, but you can use any kind that you would like. After that, we're doing 2 teaspoons of ground ginger, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon clove, 1 teaspoon nutmeg, 1 teaspoon baking powder, half a teaspoon of baking soda, and half a teaspoon of salt. And then combine all of that, just get it all mixed up and make sure there are no more clumps. Then we're going to set the dry ingredients aside. And then to a stand mixer, we're going to put 3/4 cup of room temperature unsalted butter and 1 cup of organic brown sugar. We're going to mix this up until it's nice and fluffy. Once the egg and brown sugar are nice and fluffy, we're going to add a room temperature egg and get that mixed in and combined, and then we'll add our other wet ingredients. Now that the egg is mixed in, it's time for 3/4 cup of molasses, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, and then about 1 teaspoon of orange zest. I just kind of estimate this. Once all the wet ingredients are in the bowl, it's time to give it a good mix. Make sure that you use a spatula and scrape down the sides of the bowl a few times to make sure everything's combined. Once it's combined, you can then start adding in your dry ingredients to the wet ingredients while the stand mixer is just mixing on a low speed. You want to do this in several increments. Slowly add in the dry ingredients, and then once you have all the dry ingredients in, again, you're going to want to scrape down the sides of the bowl to make sure there's no dry spots where the flour hasn't been mixed in. And an important thing with this recipe is you do not want to over mix it. So I'm going to scrape it down a little bit, and then once I scrape it down, I'm going to mix it just for a little longer, and then I'm going to call it done. So the next thing that we need to do is get our dough wrapped up to be able to be cooled in the refrigerator overnight. So I split my dough in half and I lay out some plastic wrap, and then I'm gonna just wrap this up and making sure that the sides are sealed and everything. And then I'm gonna flatten it out, and just to make sure that no parts of it are more getting colder than the others, that kind of thing, just making it nice and even. So I'm just going to repeat this process with the other half of the dough. I'm going to put them both on a plate and stick them in my refrigerator to cool overnight. Alright, and now it is the fun part. So my dough has cooled overnight, and I have some parchment paper on a clean countertop, and I'm using that same gluten-free flour to flour the surface that I'm working on. So as you can see, this dough is pretty stiff coming out of the refrigerator, but it is fairly easy to work with. It's a little sticky, I'll say, probably just because it's gluten-free. It's definitely not the easiest dough I've ever worked with, to roll out and make, use like cookie cutters on. But considering that it's gluten-free, it worked great. It was delicious. The cookies are delicious, and it worked really, really well. But the dough did have a tendency to be just slightly sticky, and I did have to keep adding more flour. Like I said, I'm using that same all-purpose flour that I used in the cookies, and considering the gluten-free, that I think they did quite well. So I'm just rolling it out to about 1/4 inch thickness, and I got this really nice big gingerbread cookie cutter on Amazon. I'll put a link to it down below. I really wanted a big one since this party I'm throwing is for young kids. I wanted them to have plenty of space to decorate because that's, most of the fun. I didn't want little tiny ones where there wasn't much space. I wanted really big ones where they could decorate with all kinds of candies and frostings and things like that. So it made it a little more challenging, as you can see, just because the cookie itself was so much bigger than my spatula. But that didn't happen on all of them, just this one mostly. The other ones came off a lot easier, so I just wanted to show you this whole process. And then we're gonna stick them in a 350-degree oven. I found that mine needed to cook for about 10 to 12 minutes. You want them to be just slightly browned on the outside and then a little soft in the middle. I did try a few of them with a smaller cookie cutter, and it was much easier to work with, much easier to get up off the parchment paper, and just easier to handle in general. And then I just reduced the cooking time to between like 8 and 10 minutes rather than 10 to 12 minutes. So if you're using a smaller cookie cutter, reduce your cooking time by about at least a couple minutes, maybe 4 minutes, just depending on your oven. I like to let the cookies cool for 1 or 2 minutes on the cookie sheets before I use a spatula to put them onto a baking rack like this. These cookies turned out amazing, they were super delicious, and I hope you will give them a try. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel down below. You can follow me on Instagram at @RaisingNobles. I'll see you there. Bye.